Hey, it's Dan, and welcome to Unified Gaming. So in this one, we're going to play Trash or Grab, the game where we check the weekly vendors to see are the items worth grabbing or are they absolute trash. As always, this is a weekly video, so the stock does change, and this is recorded on the 19th of April 2025. If you want to find the golden vendor, she's located every Saturday for the weekend in Cyrodiil. You can find her at the northern High Rock Gate if you're on DC. If you're on AED, she's down in the western Elsewhere Gate. And if you're over at the EP, she's on the southern Morrowind Gate. We will also check the other vendors in this one just full week breakdown, so do stick around. But as always, if you want to stay up to date with the series, then like, comment, but more importantly subscribe so you don't miss out. And I want to say a massive thank you to the YouTube and Patreon members who support. They get exclusive content, early access and much more. If you want to do that, there's details down below. This week she's selling the Archdruid set. This is a set for PvE in most cases, in all honesty. It is also helmets, which I generally value slightly less than shoulders, because as a PvP player you can just do the dungeon on vets and get the helmet straight away. If it's a shoulder, it's a little bit harder to get because you have to get keys, RNGness, all that stuff. So I would recommend, shoulders are more favourable in my opinion. For the set itself, it's a good set for PvE, so when you deal damage with a heavy attack, after 1.2 seconds you do some shock damage, and you put major vulnerability on them for 7 seconds. It is a huge amount of bonus damage, really good. The issue is that people can avoid this in PvP. PvE, they're dummies, they stand still, so it's not a bad PvE set, it's one of the ones worth considering. It's also a DLC dungeon, so if you don't have access to, ESO Plus for example, or the dungeons, I would suggest buying these. For this reason alone, I'm actually going to buy each one. So I'm going to buy that one, and that one. So that way I have these collected. We then have another set, which is the Magma Incarnate set. This is fantastic. This is brilliant in PvP and it's good in PvE. It is a really solid set. In PvP, when you heal yourself or an ally with a single target heal, so burst heals generally, Vigor for example, you put minor resolve, so about 3000 armor, and you also put minor courage, about 200 weapon and spell damage. That courage obviously scales up with your base stats, so if you get like major sorcery or major brutality, it will go up higher, same with minor. So this is normally around 400 damage buffed. It's quite noticeable, and it's armor. It works for you and allies. It is a fantastic set. The one piece is also incredibly good because it is recoveries. So it's one piece stam and magicka recovery, which is really unusual. So for that reason alone, I would recommend buying all of this if you don't have this. Now, as a PvP player, you're generally wanting to go and get all of these, so I will suggest buying all three of these if you haven't already, and I will come back in a moment to get all of those. Mainly for PvP, just a little tip is focus on the heavy and the medium, because they're the more resistance ones that you want generally, so I would definitely buy one of those, and I'd definitely buy one of those. The light armor one is kind of just for sticker book, in all honesty, you're not going to use as much. For PvE, as I was saying, for PvE, this is very good as well. On a healer, everybody gets free damage, so why not? If you play as a tank, I play as a tank in PvE sometimes. The one piece recovery is fantastic on a helmet because you can pair this with Splendor of Ruin, which is a mythic, which gives more damage to allies. So you can use this as a tank to get recoveries and give everybody a bonus damage boost. Really good thing here. If you're curious about that, Splendor of Ruin is actually a mythic item that you can go and get. It is a little bit hard to farm in all honesty, but it is very worth doing if you are playing as a tank. So it is here. Activating Crouch gives you and your allies 260 weapon and spell damage, but it does hurt your recoveries. So doing, obviously, that helmet will fix the recovery, which means it's 3 damage for the whole group. Very good mythic for a tank. For the jewelry this week, we have Lemir's Ring. So Lemir's Ring, when you use an ultimate, you and your allies get resources back. It's like the Dragonite passive, Battle Roar. It's okay, but I wouldn't get this personally. It's not worth it. You have Ring of Flanking. When you attack from the flank, so basically the side or behind them, you get bonus weapon and spell damage. It's 400. It's quite a lot, but there are better sets. So for this reason, I would just skip this. It's not worth it. You could use something like Stoon's Favour for loads of penetration. You could use Oak Fathers for just more damage. Typically, you'd have more damage overall with that set. You could also use some of the other crafted sets. So there's lots of options that you can do that just gives you similar for not better damage, and it's much easier to use. You then have Ring of Green Pact. This gives you just more resources. So if you have a food buff on, you get more health and more health regen. PvP, this is terrible because health regen's cut in half. PvE, you don't really need this, there's better sets, so this is terrible. You then have 2 row. This gives you major sorcery and crit chance, so major savagery and crit chance, so it's just crit. It's not great. You can get this easily from like Camo Hunter or Inner Light. If you're not using those in your Nightblade, you have this built into your kit with Cloak, so you don't really need this in all honesty. So my recommendation is skip all the jewelry. That is all pretty bad. Only reason to get this is Sticker Book, but that's about it. And just note that a lot of this stuff is farmable anyway. It's only the 375,000 Alliance Point ones where they are dungeon ones, so just note that. I would recommend grabbing all of the Magma Incarnate if you haven't already. I will come back for this light armor in a moment. And then for this other set, if you haven't got it, you can buy it. One piece pen's nice, but it's not essential. There's easier ways to get this. So that covers the Golden Vendor. Some really good items this week, mainly the monster set. Like, that is fantastic, so definitely get that if you haven't. What we now do as part of this video is we go through and check all the other vendors to see are there anything that's worth grabbing or not. So we're first going to go all the way over to the Infinite Archive in Apocrypha, and here we are going to be looking for a vendor called Filer All. Filer All is a vendor that sells essentially leads and also some scripts for the scribing system, so it's very useful. And to avoid people having like 5 or 6 videos out a week, I just do one of these in all of it. Once you get here, you're looking to the far east. It is worth stressing that in this area you need access to Archdruid Fortunes. These are like their own currency here, which you have to engage with the system, but it's good. This week we are selling the Dwarven Scarab, so this is it's not for PvP, it doesn't really do anything, so it's just like cosmetic-y stuff generally. You then have the silver sturdy paintings. This is for Death Dealer's Feet. Death Dealer's Feet is fantastic. So if you're unsure what this mythic does, I actually have this on this character. It is brilliant. So I would definitely recommend getting this if you are after this mythic. How this works is that when you use this, you get given more and more max resources essentially. I would also say that because this lead, this lead is incredibly hard to get. You have to complete Dragonstar Arena, and on top of that, you have to complete the final boss to get a chance for this lead. So you have to get into the room where you get the items at the end of it to get this lead. If you do not have this, buy this now. This is by far the best lead to get for this mythic. It took me ages to farm this. I can't stress enough, buy this. This is like a must buy this week. You then have Chokerthorn, which is good. I wouldn't rush to buy this. For the scripts this week, you have Force, which is a bit mid. Heroism, a bit mid. Mitigation, near. Cavalier's Charge, this is fantastic. This is such a good script. If you use it, what you would end up doing is using it on something like Banner. So you go to Banner's Bearer, for example. You could put on mitigation for just damage reduction for you and your allies. You could put on some damage done, so Shock's quite a common one we'd use. Cavalier's Charge, which gives us more damage the faster we are. And then you put on something like Courage. You now have a skill that gives you 450 weapon and spell damage, 200 damage down here, plus bonus damage here. Combine this when it's fully buffed on the build, it's about 900 weapon and spell damage up to 1100. It is fantastic, stupidly good. They have nerfed this next patch, just heads up, you can't use this in stealth anymore. But if you're playing in PvE, this is just a huge damage boost for everybody. So, my advice would be if you do PvE, buy this. This is very, very, very good. I actually had to pay gold for this, and it cost me 2 million gold because I couldn't. The RNG was just too slow. So I would get this if you haven't got this. I would just stress though that this will be 5 times the cost, so it's going to be 20,000 if you don't know this on a character. It's still worth it in my opinion. It is that good as a script. But that's the vendor this week. I would personally, if it's me, 100% buy this. If you had one thing to buy from here, get this. If you don't have 5,000 fortunes, farm them and buy this. 5,000 fortunes, about 1 run in Infinite Archive, maybe 2. But this lead is incredibly hard to get, so buy this now. And then the script, it's a nice like quality of life for some builds, especially PvE. We then go over to the Scalarium. The Scalarium's in Avea, and you have to have completed the Gold Road Scalarium quest line. Here you'll get access to a vendor called Fernando, and he sells a range of scripts for you that you can then use to like modify the scribe skills. The scripts do change week on week, and we cover it in this video. Once you're inside, you need to go up the stairs, and you'll note that this character, I've not done the main story with this character, hence why this NPC's here, but because I've completed the system once with a character on the account, the vendor I do need is actually available. So if you haven't done this system already, you do need to do this, or you won't see this vendor down here. Fernando sells the following. He sells all of the totems, but these scripts here do change. So this week he has evasion, shock damage, assassin's misery. These are all really, really good. Like, really good. These two in the middle are fantastic. So evasion is kind of, it's good. I wouldn't rush to buy this, but it's gold. So my advice is, if it's gold, just buy it. Like, yeah. But the shock damage is brilliant for sorcerer, because what you can do as a sorcerer, and in one of my new builds for next patch, so with the new subclass, and I do use this, Willed Soul, you can use shock damage or physical, but shock works really well. Class Mastery for more shock damage on top of that, and then Major Breach. You get this skill called Shock in Soul, which hits very hard. It's 9,000 there plus 2,000, that's 11,000 there. If we buff up with our damage boost and actually put on some food, you'll see that this, let me redo this now. So there we go, and I'm just going to update it. You have to like manually update it, unfortunately. So yeah, it's 8.5 there, so that's 10,500 plus a bit more. When it's fully buffed, this is about 11,000 on the build normally, and this is about 2,500. It's about 13,000 spammable. This becomes the hardest hit spammable for Magic Sorcerer, so fantastic script. And because it's a shock one, it pairs really well with the Sorcerer passive, so this is worth considering. Assassin's Misery is fantastic for certain builds. The way in which you would use this is on Elemental Explosion. So that's over in the Destruction skill line. Out of here, you would do this as basically a ranged burst set skill. So you'd pair this with like Winterborn, for example, or Tarnished Nightmare, or Vicious Death. I do actually have a members exclusive build maximizing this, and it has like a 19,000 tooltip. It is obscene, so you can do some crazy stuff with this skill. I would personally recommend either Frost damage if you're using Winterborn. If you're not using Winterborn, then Fire damage because there's loads of vampires. You then use Assassin's Misery because this applies Burn and Shield and Concussion, and those three status effects can then proc stuff, but more importantly, they do bonus damage on the burst, which is what you want. And then you can then pair this with anything you like. Off balance is quite nice because you can then heavy attack stun. If you can use Defile to affect their healing, you can use Cowardice to reduce their damage and thus the healing if they have it that way round. You can use Brittle, which gives you more crit damage, but it doesn't apply on the initial hit. But I would normally go with Off Balance personally, or Defile. Then you end up getting a skill like this. As I said, on my actual dedicated Nightblade bomb build, this is like 19,000. It is stupidly good. It does one-shot like medium-sized groups. If you do it in a duo, you can like one-shot an entire group if you sync. It's really, really good. So I would definitely buy this script. It's hard to get. It doesn't drop easily. It's very expensive. We then finally check the Telvar vendor to see what do they sell and do they have anything that's worth getting. As always, this is obviously a weekly breakdown of what you think of the items and so on. So if you want to stay up to date with this and know what to buy and what not to buy, then do subscribe so you don't miss out. And yeah, once you get into Imperial City, you are looking for this sign here. So it looks essentially like a craft symbol. And you follow that all the way down to your traders. And you're looking for an NPC. If you're playing on DC like me, she's an orc. And she's just called the Telvar vendor. Here she sells a range of things. So for example, she sells some jewelry. These are incredibly expensive. So my general rule of thumb is don't get the jewelry. It's not worth it. You can just buy this with gold. People will buy it, they'll sell it. It's easier. But they are quite, it's just worth checking. The main thing is the leads that we come down here for. So the Vengeance Leech set, this is great for leveling. If you're leveling a character, or you're leveling CP in particular, absolutely fantastic. When you kill an enemy, you get resources back, and this doesn't have a cooldown. So you can literally put this on a build and just spam loads of trash and you just constantly have max resource. So I use this when I was farming CP. So if you are lower level CP, this is really, really strong as like a 3-piece set. And you can also pair this with like a mythic item and some more trainees to get more damage. So there's some really good ways to use this. I just wouldn't pay 100,000 Telvar. I'd buy this from a trader. You then have the Feist Cannon that when you direct deal crit damage to an enemy behind them, you put poison in them, you heal. It sounds great on paper, it's actually really bad, so I would skip this. The main reason we come here is really for these two leads to see if they're any good. So we have the length of sharpened spikes. This is a lead for the Shapeshifter's Chain. So what this does is it lets you transform into different like forms, so like werewolf, for example, a bit cheaper than you would normally. It's a kind of an okay mythic. It's not like one to rush to. This lead itself, it does drop from a boss, so it's from Spindle Clutch 2. It's not the hardest one to get. The mythic is a bit mid, so my opinion would be like to skip this. All it does is it reduces the cost of your transformation, so your werewolf and stuff, by 15%, and you also get a bit more max resource. It's a good like mythic for werewolf builds, but you're better just using some of the newer ones. They're just stronger, so I wouldn't rush to buy this. We then have another mythic, which is the Thorns Lark Cladding. This is a mythic that you don't really see much used in all honesty. But how this works is that when you have this on, if you continuously sprint, you charm people. So you can run through people in PvP and it charms them so they get stunned. That means they kind of walk towards where the charm took place and you get some resources back. It's a very gimmicky mythic in all honesty. You're not going to use this in PvE. You're not going to use this in PvP in most cases. So I personally wouldn't rush to get this. This does also drop from just like world nodes, so it's quite easy to get. We then check the scripts down here to see if there's anything good. We have Berserk. You know, that you'll find that quite quickly typically, and it's not huge. You can get this passive minor buff anyway. Protection, easy to get access to. Taunt, it's not bad. This is pretty good. So if you want to play on a tank and use sort of a ranged tank skill, for example, something like shield throw, so you can go with shield throw. You could use like taunt here, and then you can use whatever you like. You could also use a willed soul, and you could use it like on a pull, so that you can pull people in and then have the taunt afterwards. Soul burst gives you some choices here, so you can immobilize. So if you mix like these three skills, you can end up getting essentially the DK kind of toolkit of the chains, the taunt. That said, you do just have access to the Undaunted skill, which is probably better in my opinion. So you do actually have Inner Fire, which just taunts people. So I would just use this. But you know, it is an option. We then also have inside here the Anchorette's Cruelty. This is great on paper, but it's really bad in like practicality. When you utilize this, it gives you essentially Oblivion damage, which sounds awesome, like absolutely disgusting. The problem is that when you use it, it's only 1.5% of their max health, and it's every 1 second for 5 seconds, which means it's very cool. It's like pure dots DPS, but in all honesty, it doesn't do much more DPS, if any, than Lingering Torment. And at that point, Lingering Torment is easy to get access to, and this uses soul gems and it has a cooldown, and Torment doesn't. You can just put this on loads of people constantly. So for that reason alone, I don't normally use this. This is only good on like meme niche builds where you stack Cruelty here. You might then use it on Soul Burst and stack it again, so like with disease damage, and you might use Cruelty down here again. And then you might then use another Oblivion set like Night Slayer and just have 3 Oblivion sources of damage, which at that point it can be okay, but you still need other gimmicky like monster sets and stuff to just make it viable, so I wouldn't rush to buy this. But yeah, covers it, guys. There's some actually really good stuff this week, a lot better than previously. If you haven't like got those monster sets at the start, get them. They are fantastic. That lead in the Infinite Archive is brilliant. Like, I would 100% suggest buying that if you haven't got it. It is the best lead, hence the thumbnail clickbait thing, so sorry. And then as for some of the other scripts, they're pretty decent in the Scalarium, and over here they're like a bit mid, but all in all, a very solid week for the vendors this week. If you want to stay up to date with the series, then you know what to do, subscribe, and if you like what I do here, likes and comments do help. And if you want to support, then there's a Patreon, there's a YouTube membership stuff, there's exclusives, early access, all that good stuff. Details below. But as always, I'll catch you in the next video, next stream. So thanks for watching, guys. Take care. And bye.